Hi, I'm Gavin Carlson, and this is Out of Bounds, Daily Bruin Sports Podcast. Chip Kelly's seat is on fire just in time for rivalry week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Out of Bounds, the official sports podcast of the Daily Bruin. As always, I'm your host, Gavin Carlson, a fourth-year sports staff writer here at the Daily Bruin, and the football trio is in the studio. Joseph, Jack, how are we doing? Jack Nelson, fourth-year senior sports staff writer. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Gavin. It's so great to be back with the trio. It feels like it's been so long since three of us have been together. My parents were just here this weekend. Shout out to them for flying out all the way from Massachusetts. So I'm excited to get going here. Let's do this.
Yes, and then Joseph, my boss, the sports editor of the Daily Bruin. How are you today?
Football, 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 football.
I don't know what the heck that was. This is a football podcast despite the Los Dodgers.
Yeah, it's the City Connect hoodie.
Interesting. We're talking football. Fitting City Connect because we have a crosstown rivalry coming up. But before we talk about the big game between UCLA and USC, what the heck happened last Saturday? UCLA against the worst team in the Pac-12, Arizona State. And as you all know, we don't need to give you a play-by-play of this one because you watched it. I'm sorry that you watched it because was that the worst football game you've ever seen in your life between Arizona State and UCLA?
I think sitting there watching it was like shocking, just kind of watching everything unfold because of how kind of ridiculous that game was. And then after the fact, you're reflecting on it. You're like, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
Because I think that was kind of the takeaway that you and I both had after the game.
Yes.
Because it was a crazy football game. But that was the Pac-12 After Dark weirdness that I wanted. So I was pleased.
Yeah, we came into the game, Jack and I on the last pod, saying it was a must-win game. We kind of didn't spend much time on the prediction, but who would have thought that our first episode, when we both called the Arizona State upset, ended up being right? Just Gav Stradamus, Jack Stradamus, you know how we do it.
Chills.
But let's talk about this game. Let's talk about this inexplicable, ridiculous, like you said, loss. Just kind of a crazy game. Kenny Dillingham had like 3 plays, I think he called, just put 4 offensive linemen on the sideline and then not even throw it to that side, still throw it to the other side, or just chuck the ball 80 yards down the field, 40 yards down the field, 60 yards down the field, and just
get a PI call.
Whether the receiver's looking at the quarterback or not, whether it's even a quarterback throwing the ball, just throw it and see what happens. And they didn't do anything. They scored 3 points in the first half, but somehow that was enough because Chip Kelly with his third-string quarterback, Colin Schlee, put up a goose egg and had boos going into the halftime locker room. We'll start with Jack because I was with Joseph in the press box. Jack, what were your thoughts when you saw Kenny Dillingham throwing 4 offensive linemen on the sideline or just throwing streaks the whole first half? What did you think of that?
Well, let me tell you, Gavin, Kenny Dillingham seems like he's a big Madden guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's got some Madden calls right up his sleeve, and he must have been laughing to himself on the sideline calling some of those plays the other night. But, yeah, I honestly had no clue what he was doing at the time, and I had to do this research later on. But apparently, because Arizona State was so depleted with starters, that basically what he was doing, he was moving his entire offensive line off to the sides. That, of course, UCLA's defensive line had to move to that side and reduce pressure on the quarterback. Because they're so short-handed at the quarterback position that he didn't want his quarterbacks to get pummeled all game long. That was the reasoning for his madness.
And it worked.
Yeah. I mean, just for
You won the
context,
football game.
like he said, third-string quarterback, Trinh Bourget. I think it's Bourget. Is that the pronunciation? Yeah.
I believe so.
He's the starter. So right off the bat, this third-string quarterback excuse for UCLA, not valid. They're going up against the third-string quarterback. Then they have their pseudo fourth-string quarterback, a running back, Cam Scatabo, throw the best pass of the game, a 25-yard touchdown. And then you have their third-string tight end,
Jalen Conyers,
as their fifth-string quarterback throwing lame ducks. He was
going for the PI calls, and it worked.
At the end of the game, it did work at the end of the game. But we're being silly because this game was so silly and ridiculous. But in all seriousness, coming in, and this is just going to be an ASU recap, a Chip Kelly update, and then a preview of USC. In terms of the game, you're playing the worst team in the Pac-12. You're coming off your worst loss of the season. Chip Kelly, whether you read headlines or not, you know that people are calling for your job coming into this game. And your offense puts up 0 points against Arizona State. Obviously, 3 fourth down conversions failed. You have a 1st and goal at the 5, and that turns into a 2nd down push from the 3-yard line for an inch.
The 2nd down push was kind of great.
Unbelievable.
Strange call.
From the 3.
And then other than that, 3 handoffs to Carson Steele for about half a yard each carry, including a 4th and goal at the 1 stuff. Then you have a 4th and 1 from the 10.
I think it was the 9.
The 9 stuffed. Yeah. And then in the third quarter, you have a 4th and 2 or 1. Yeah. Carson Steele again, stuffed. Josh Carlin after the game said the offensive line didn't, get enough of a push, obviously, and on any of those plays. Chip Kelly said he took responsibility for the play call, and I just don't know how
a lot of very candid quotes after the game.
Yeah, because the state of the we'll get into that. But what were your thoughts on all of those 4th down calls? Just do you blame him for going, simple? It's kind of like we are better than Arizona State. We should be able to get a yard without having to do a play action rollout, flea flicker, the 4 linemen on the side. Kenny Dillingham had to do that because he had the worst team. You have the better team. You should be able to run the ball for a yard. What do you blame the play calling, the decision making, or is it just?
I think the play calling was sound the first time it happened. Like the first 4th and 1, okay, that's tough. You know, you didn't get the yard. Yeah. That happens. But then the second and third times it's happened, it's like, take a field goal. Like it's a very close game. Just take 7 or take 3 points,
or at least change the call, right?
Yeah, or run a different play.
Yeah, Chip after. Go ahead.
Yeah, here's the thing, because like they ended up having 7 points and 3 drives. All of those they didn't score any of them. 3 consecutive drives in the first half, as you mentioned. 3 4th down opportunities that they all failed to convert on.
Yeah.
And you only needed 10 of those points to at least force overtime in the end game, I guess. But also, it also comes down to the final drive for me. I mean, we have to talk about,
of course,
the penalties.
They
UCLA lost itself this game at many different.
It was only down 3 at that point.
It was only down 3, right? Yeah. Because they were down 10-7. They just scored, and then it appeared their defense had gotten a stop on 3rd and 14. Yeah. Bourget rolls out,
basically gets
sacked for 2 yards, and then Grayson Murphy commits an unsportsmanlike conduct after the play, 15 yards, automatic first down. Then on this 3 plays later, they heave a pass downfield
for the 18th time. It's not like it was a surprise. Wait, Arizona State threw the ball deep? They did that the whole game.
And then, sure enough, Devin Kirkwood couldn't keep his hands off the receiver, gets called for PI. Then Arizona State goes down, scores, and that's the ballgame.
And then the running back, Cam Scadaboo, actually runs.
How fitting that the running back who threw the best pass of the game also has the best run of the game.
I'm sure heads were rolling in UCLA's meeting rooms after the game. Or, on Sunday,
of course,
talking about those kind of plays, because those are the kinds of things that you just can't be doing in a game like that.
Couple things before we transition from the game itself to big picture Chip Kelly, because as of this recording, he's still the football coach of UCLA, despite being asked about it this morning. And couple last things. You talked about it's a low scoring game, defense blows it at the end, but can you really blame this defense for being frustrated? Because they've been the better unit all season. Despite all this talk coming into every year about them being the liability, this unit's been the best unit all season. They hold Arizona State to 3 points, and they're losing at halftime. You're going into the locker room with boos after putting on your best first half performance of the season, theoretically. Sure, you're going up against nothing. You're going up against Madden playbooks, but you hold a team at 3 points, and you're getting booed as you walk off the field. Even though the boos are obviously directed at the offense, you're going in the locker room at halftime in a horrible situation despite having your best half. So the frustration, obviously, you can't defend it. The Grayson Murphy penalty is ridiculous, but the frustration makes, and even the few misplays with Kirkwood and everything, you're gonna make a mistake like at some point. And how much can you really blame the defense?
I think the defense couldn't adjust to what Kenny Dillingham was calling, and I think that probably goes back more to the defensive coaching staff than it does to the defensive players, because I think when they come out in that swinging gate formation with 4 offensive linemen to one side, like, that's a very weird thing, and that's kind of hard to react to. And I just don't know if they ever really recovered from that. I think we asked Alex Johnson about it. I don't remember exactly what it was that he said, but that just seems like the kind of thing that really catches you off guard. And if you don't figure it out, you're gonna keep getting hit on it all game, and that seemed to be kind of what happened.
Yeah,
I think for me, just this starts with last week when you really start to see the frustration boil over after the game. Right, there was some words used by UCLA's defensive players like disunified, divisive. Like this team, it seems like they're at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I'm not trying to speculate on what the state of the chemistry is in the locker room or anything like that.
But they told us. They told us. Disunified. They told us, right?
They admit this team is not a whole. This team is not moving forward as a team, which it needs to do if it actually wants to win some games the rest of the season and actually end on a good note and not feel like this is a total disaster, which it already, in many respects, is a disaster. So, yeah.
And I think that's a fitting way to transition to talking about big picture UCLA football, Chip Kelly. Obviously, I think before this game, people are calling for his job. After a shutout or a scoreless first quarter, people are calling. At halftime, there's boos. I have to say, UCLA people have said some things, obviously, for years about lack of attendance, lack of energy around. There was more than 56,000 people at the Rose Bowl for a game against the worst team in the Pac-12 a week after the worst loss of the season. So
I was surprised. I was really surprised.
I was surprised as well.
And it was a very lively Rose Bowl at the start of the game.
I don't care if 3,000 of those fans were maybe elementary and high school students getting cheap tickets. I don't care if it's the last game of the year for most students because the only other home game is the Thanksgiving weekend game against Cal. It doesn't matter. There was more than 56,000 people in the Rose Bowl to watch a team that just had his worst performance of the season the week before, and you score 0 points at halftime. It's there's no question that there's people calling for his job at halftime before the game even ends. I think it's the most embarrassing loss in the Chip Kelly era. I mean, I know they lost the game to Oklahoma by like 50-plus points, but the state of the program was not great at that time, obviously. This team, it's year 6, and you're losing to Arizona State. It's unfathomable.
I think Jack wrote about it. I think the competition for like worst losses is this game, the Arizona game last year, the Fresno State game 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Stanford the year before.
Yeah, and the Stanford game.
I think what separates
it's up there.
What separates it though is the Fresno State game, especially
DTR got hurt.
DTR got hurt, and you're coming off this ultra high LSU win.
Yeah.
So it's like obviously that's mainly on the coaching that your team wasn't able to focus up and prepare for Fresno State, but like you're coming off the worst game of the season, and you're playing it couldn't have been an easier spot for your team. You're coming off the worst performance of the season. Your team is as focused as they're going to be coming off that game. And for you to lay an egg like they did, it's shocking. Let's talk about Chip Kelly. Jack, Joseph, who wants to just like
Jack, you can start.
Take it away.
I've been going.
He's still employed. Should he still be employed right now?
So no, he should not be employed with UCLA football right now. I'm shocked that he still is. I actually thought I legitimately thought if they had lost this game, he was not going to make it until the morning after. I thought that Drummond was going to give him the boot right after the game if he had lost, and I was surprised that I'm shocked that he's still employed with UCLA right now. I mean, I've talked about it before. The whole reason for, or at least the justification for keeping him in the future was about the Big Ten having continuity at the coaching position, but you have to think about just a failure with recruiting, the just absolute inability to create offense, which him as one of the offensive geniuses in football that he supposedly is, he's not what he once was, clearly. And you have to look at the hard facts, right? 6 years, UCLA, 33-3. 33-33, sorry.
You could.
With no bowl wins, no Pac-12 championship appearances, and the 3 lowest attendance figures since the Rose Bowl first hosted UCLA.
Yeah, I think I've been beating the Chip Kelly won't get fired because of the Big Ten move drum for much of this season. But I think after that game, even I was like, he's either getting fired tomorrow, that being Sunday, or he'll get fired at the end of the season. And I think the fact that he did not get fired in the lead up to the rivalry game indicates that regardless of outcome for these last 2 games, which I'll go on the record and I say I think they're losing both of them.
We'll get to the previews.
Yeah. I think he'll probably get the boot at some point after the season ends, like after the regular season, before whatever bowl game they end up in with their 6 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make my argument as to why he should have been fired yesterday. We're recording on Monday.
I thought he was going to get fired yesterday.
I thought he was, and as I think I don't know, is it fair to call me the biggest Chip defender on this pod this year, coming into the year? I don't know.
I don't even know.
After the Arizona game, I think most people were like, that might need to be it already, just because of the context. You're playing against a former UCLA interim head coach that was considered for the job, that's multiple years behind in terms of tenure at that program, and he's already passed, right? Chip Kelly's at UCLA. That's already enough of a red flag. But this game, we said it coming into the game, this is a fireable offense if you lose this game.
We literally said it, yeah.
It's a fireable offense because you're coming in knowing your job is on the brink of, you know you're on the hot seat. And for your team to come out that not prepared, it's shocking. Here's my biggest reason as to why it should have been Sunday. For me, it's the quarterback thing. I know we've been talking about it so much, and I know that Dante and Ethan were reportedly available in emergency situations, which
How is losing to Arizona State not an emergency situation?
How is after Colin Schley gets hurt not an emergency situation?
I interpret that as, I think Ethan was more injured than Dante throughout this week.
That's what it seemed like. Even when they were
agree.
coming out of the games that they got hurt in, they seemed more, or Ethan Garber's portrayed more injured.
So the way I interpret that is Dante Did they even ever say it was a concussion or no?
I don't think we ever got any.
The only thing he told us is that they were a full go at one point in practice this week. So
yeah. You're a full go. So maybe Dante is a true freshman. He hasn't had the regular full week of preparation. It's coaching malpractice on your fault or on your point, whatever. It's coaching malpractice that your true freshman can't have 2 to 3 weeks or days in the week of practice and be ready to go against Arizona State. Dante should not need to have 5 practices at full go to be prepared to play the worst team in the Pac-12. Or to not even have to start, but to be able to be thrown in if your team has 0 points at halftime and throw a quick screen to Logan Loya. He does not need 5 days to prep for that, to throw a quick screen. And this all comes back to, at the beginning of the season, this team, the argument for UCLA was they have the easiest schedule probably in the whole conference, right? So whether or not you have the solution at quarterback, whether or not a true freshman is ready for Utah and Oregon State, you have the easiest schedule. You need to do one of two things, in my opinion, coming into the season. You need to either threaten for the Pac-12 title game because your schedule is so weak, or the other argument with Chip Kelly is we want the continuity going in the Big Ten. You have a stud 5-star true freshman quarterback. At the very least, at the end of the season, you better have a respectable record and know that Dante is the guy for next year. One of those two has to be done. And what do we have instead for UCLA football?
Neither.
We have
Neither.
We have losses to Arizona and Arizona State, and probably, is it fair to say the situation between Dante and Chip is probably worse than it was before he even played a game?
I think it's just, it's so hard to gauge where they're at in terms of being hurt and getting in that rhythm. But even before he got hurt, he was bad.
Yeah, the
state of everything is so messed up right now, just because of how everything is shaken out this season between injuries and guys getting benched and guys getting starts and games lost. There's so much disorganization, I think, in what's happening. And the easiest way to start solving that problem is you just fire the head coach.
Yeah,
and that's probably what's going to happen in all likelihood.
Your job, you're the offensive coordinator and coach, and I'll give you credit, Chip Kelly. You didn't do much with recruiting your whole tenure, but you stole the gem, Dante Moore, from a Pac-12 rival. That was easily your recruiting highlight of your tenure.
Biggest move ever made.
That's the biggest thing Chip Kelly has done since he's been here, which is why some people can make the argument that even if the season's not a full success, as long as Dante's playing a majority of the season and he's getting better and you go, 8 wins maybe because of how weak the schedule is, and then we got Chip Kelly with Dante Moore going into our first year in the Big Ten, we'll put up a fight. We're not ever going to compete with Ohio State and Michigan and maybe even Washington or Oregon, but we'll be competitive. The relationship between those two went back. We don't know anything about their relationship, but there's no way that Dante is feeling better now about being at a UCLA Bruin than he was at the beginning of the season when he said, I came to UCLA because Chip Kelly is an offensive mastermind. The handling, you got to pick one or the other. Either you're competing and you're picking Garbers and then you better win, or you're semi-competing and you're planning for the future and you're going Dante. To have neither success, you're not prepared for next year, and you didn't even have a successful season. Fireable offense, you lose to the worst team in the conference with their third-string quarterback. You should not be the coach of UCLA on Monday morning.
I will say this just because we haven't mentioned it yet, but something that, I don't know, maybe Martin Jarman's thinking about, if he's thinking about any way to kind of justify to keep Chip Kelly at this point, is that the whole buyout thing. Right now, You fire him, it's an $8 million buyout, and after the season ends, it drops to $4 million.
I will say one thing, but real quick. There's still some conflicting things about whether or not it goes from 8 to 4 right away, like a drop, or if it's slowly decreasing. We don't know for sure.
Sorry, that's speculation.
No, it's not speculation. I think most people assumed, and
there are known figures about the contract, but
we know
the nitty-gritty details are a little more obscure.
Yeah, we know it will be 4 in a month.
I'll read from the Ben Bulch LA Times article. Kelly's buyout calls for him to receive $8.5 million if he's dismissed before December 2023, and $4.27 million if he's terminated before December 2024. We don't know when in December of 2023 that rollover happens of the decrease in buyout.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. We can keep going about that argument.
For perspective, as I'm sure a lot of people saw, Texas A&M fired Jimbo Fisher a couple days ago, who was 44-25 at Texas A&M. He had a $76 million buyout,
which is insane.
And they paid it.
That's
insane.
That's such a crazy number for a buyout of a contract.
But it says a lot about UCLA athletics. We know their financial struggles. We know that if this is a reason that they're holding on a chip to save that little amount of money,
but we also don't know if that's the reason. We don't. We can't say that it is the reason.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying if it's possible, then that's another concern.
Yes,
that's a bigger concern, right?
And real quick, and we're going to go to USC. If it's not the $4 million, is it we have to beat USC?
Yeah, then what is it? If it's
is it we have to beat USC, but then we're still going to fire him? Is it if we beat USC and win the popcorn chip bowl, then we'll keep him? No, I think I think we all agree.
Popcorn chip bowl,
Pop-Tarts bowl this year. I just found that out the other day.
Is that actually a thing?
There's actually a Pop-Tarts bowl.
I love me some Pop-Tarts.
The Tostitos Fiesta Bowl.
Chip Kelly,
USC.
I think we all agree that he could beat USC by 30 points this week.
It wouldn't matter.
And beat Cal by 100 points and beat I don't even know, like Arizona or something. Well, they're not going to play a Pac-12 team, but beat some random team that's ranked 30th by 100 points in the bowl game. They're not keeping him. He's done, right? So why is he still here? That's
the question of the day. That's the question of the season now, isn't it?
If it's $4 million that's keeping him here, I think that says a lot about the state of things, because at this point, I don't know how much people donate, but in this day and age in college football, it's about keeping your fan base happy, keeping your fan base donating money to your NIL collectives so that you can go get players. We know this. This isn't a secret anymore. So whether or not you're missing out on $1 million worth of donations by keeping Chip Kelly, you're still the fan base is the most angry easily it's been since he's been here. And that's why it annoyed me as someone who doesn't even root for the team or anything. For there to be 56,000+ people there and you put out that performance, it's an insult to those fans that he's still the coach of the team on Monday, in my opinion.
What a confusing performance.
Yeah.
What a confusing game.
We could talk about it from, I mean, even, triple option, Colin Schlee. I think another thing real quick, Michigan beat Penn State this past weekend. Penn State had the number one rush defense in the country. And Michigan ran the ball 32 times in a row at one point. 32 times in a row at one point. Despite having J.J. McCarthy, a Heisman Trophy candidate, and going against the number one rush defense in the country, they ran the ball 32 times in a row and picked up a win at that environment.
Because Jim Harbaugh wasn't allowed to be there.
You can't run the ball. If you have a third-string quarterback that you don't feel confident throwing the ball on, which is another thing, I'm sorry. This guy is not a 14-year-old. He's a college quarterback who threw the ball quite a bit at Kent State. Why are you scared to have him throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field at this point in the season? Maybe the first week or two, he's just a special. You had a week knowing it's probably Colin Schlee, and you're telling me that you're not confident enough to have him throw the ball 10 yards down the field? I'm sorry. And you're an offensive mastermind. And I think you're an offensive mastermind. But it's fading away, and this team is disunified as much as they could ever be to lose that game.
The Chip Kelly shine is now like a matte color. It's not there. It's all gone.
Yeah. Okay. We have to quickly transition now to USC because, like we said, he's on the hottest seat ever ahead of the biggest game of every season. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to the Coliseum. You lose by 3 points last year after that big win 2 years ago at the Coliseum. So first time back. But they win this game, they lose this game. It doesn't make a difference.
Is there any scenario where it makes a difference? Like I said, if they score 42 points and win 42-32 and beat Caleb Williams, is that like, Chip Kelly has a chance to stay here?
If Dante has a fantastic game, this time I start Dante and has a fantastic game, maybe
I think that's the only argument because like we're saying, the only argument of not having a successful season is knowing that you have this Chip Kelly-Dante partnership going into the Big Ten. But
there's been nothing to indicate that would be possible happening.
One game is not a good sample size.
USC, I will say, I described this to Jack earlier, that USC's defense versus UCLA's offense is a stoppable force versus a movable object. And it's kind of the same thing on the opposite end where it's like UCLA's defense is like an unstoppable force, or an immovable. I'm getting my metaphor.
It's all right. This isn't physics class. You're okay, buddy.
Yeah.
UCLA's defense is good. USC's offense is good.
Both USC's defense and UCLA's offense are bad.
Not good. Yes.
So it's kind of weird.
Let's jump into predictions then. Jack, who do you have?
I've got 38-21 USC, which is probably pretty generous for UCLA's offense, considering what we've seen these past few weeks. I'll say this much. USC's defense, it's pretty horrid. I mean, yes, they fired Alex Grinch. I guess just some numbers to kind of back it up a little bit. This season, they've averaged 34.6, or they're allowing an average of 34.6 points per game. Over the past 5 games, which they've lost 4 of, they're averaging 43.8 points per game allowed, which is a lot of points. I don't care who your defensive coordinator is. That didn't really change that much last week against Oregon, and I think UCLA's offense clearly has to figure something out. I don't see why you can't put up multiple touchdowns against this USC defense, but USC's offense is going to be too much to keep pace with. There's no question. I mean, this is Caleb Williams we're talking about here.
Joseph?
I've got 35-14 USC. I have a bigger margin of loss than Jack does. It's the same. Watching UCLA's offense, they put up 7 on Arizona State at home. I don't know how that translates to putting up any more than, no matter how bad USC's defense is. I think this UCLA offense is suffering just from gross incompetency right now and an inability to get in the end zone. And I think that's going to play out no matter how bad USC's defense is, especially since you're going on the road. Like, that stadium is going to be packed. It's going to be very loud with USC fans that want to beat their rival. That's how it's just going to shake out.
Yeah. 17-point USC win, 21-point USC win, I believe. That's what you guys had. I have it 31-17 USC, of course. One thing to keep an eye on, if the defense has a stellar performance, if they hold Caleb Williams to 21 points or something, one of their lowest outcomes of the season, keep your eye out for D'Anton Lynn. Maybe he's, applying for the UCLA head coaching job in this game if they have a solid performance. But other than that, we all have USC putting it down on UCLA this Saturday. It should be an interesting game. It's always great. It's still one of the best rivalries in the West Coast, maybe in the entire country. That uniform combo is the greatest thing you will see.
It's a great combo.
That blue versus red.
The red is very
it's
good.
beautiful. Hopefully the game is more entertaining than recent UCLA games.
I've been begging for an actual entertaining football game. I mean, Arizona State was just entertaining because it was weird.
Wait, you don't like tush pushes from the 3? You don't like that?
Occasionally, but not to that extreme.
Well, you're not. This is not the Philadelphia Eagles. This is college football.
Yeah. I will tush push us to the end of this episode. That was awful.
That's segues, baby.
Yes.
Worthy effort.
This was Out of Bounds. You can watch us on UCLA Daily Bruin's YouTube channel. You can listen on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and just about anywhere else where you can listen to podcasts. So much content this week. DailyBruin.com. Please go. We have columns. We have previews. We have notebooks. There'll be a scouting report. There'll be a wrap. We will be at the game. There will be so much coverage. Also, basketball coverage, men's basketball, women's basketball. So please, dailybruin.com. We are grinding. Probably more than Chip Kelly. I'm just saying. But thank you so much for watching and listening. That was it for this episode. UCLA travels to the Coliseum. We'll see what happens. So long. Thank you.